Yeah, absolutely. We have very much concern. We have our partner with the Washington Park Association, who have been taking on the leadership and spearheading a lot of the conversation. You know, in everything there is education. We have to educate our neighbors. Our neighbors have to know what's important, because a lot of things that happen around us sometimes goes past us, because we're the most ones that are affected by it as neighbors and as people who live in the neighborhood. But we cannot always leave things on politicians and say, it's your idea to get this done. It's more important to hear from our neighbors and develop our neighbors in the struggle around why it's important for us to push back on what's happening at the port, and especially around the recycling that is intent to come to that area. Because of the quality of air, we heard about that earlier. We heard about asthma for children in schools, and we heard about the health care that affect. For me, not too long ago, that area was redistricted with a line cut out of the ward that I served, but that doesn't mean that that is not a part of my ward, and it's not a part of the people who still live there. I mean, a pencil didn't erase the people that live in that neighborhood. So to everybody that lives around that area, and for all of us that live in Providence, we all should be concerned about what's happening down here. Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the greatest things about serving on City Council with my colleague Councilwoman Harris is both of us come from community organizing, right? And the things that have been happening in Washington Park the last few months have been truly inspiring, where a whole neighborhood is coming out very, very clearly and saying, look, enough is enough. This neighborhood has been subject to higher asthma rates, more air pollution, and these long-term problems that affect someone's entire life from birth to adulthood, even after they leave the neighborhood. And so, I do think, coming to this from a community organizing place, like what your elected official says and does is important, but it's not as important as what we all do together. I think the question spoke specifically to your constituents, and so of course I represent Ward 13 and this neighborhood, but I'm an elected official in the city of Providence, and every person who lives in the city of Providence is a constituent of mine. I think this is a citywide issue, and I'm happy to support the advocacy that's been happening.
Us? Sure. Well, I don't know. I don't know if you had other questions involving the state specifically as well. Several years ago, someone wanted to build a $1 billion project there, create 10,000 jobs, create a business infrastructure that and it was going to be a tri-state venture with a tri-city venture with Cranston and East Providence. But lo and behold, it never happened. Now, you may not like the idea, but it was a casino. Steve Wynn was proposing that 25 years ago, but I say maybe there's something hybrid. We can do that with a variety of businesses, small businesses, some big businesses. So this is about promoting that. I think that's a crown jewel, but no one's promoting it. We need to promote that. I think that's an ideal area. I just can imagine doing something creatively with East Providence and Cranston. Having some yachts there, having, whatever, some small businesses, some artisans, doing something with the schools. The colleges. I think we can do something there, but again, there's not that creative thinking and the wherewithal to want to do it. I just see a lack of that. And I think we have to think outside the box. We're just simply not doing that.
So I'm strongly opposed to the garbage dump proposal, and I'm not happy with the fact that we let in that LNG terminal to the Port of Providence after it had been rejected in a wealthier, whiter community. One of the campaign commitments I made during the campaign was that I wasn't going to vote to reconfirm any members of the CRMC who voted for that project, which I've kept. I voted against Janet Coit's reconfirmation. She was the one who ran through the project most aggressively. And I think we need to talk about our total gutting and devastation of our basic pollution enforcement in this state. The Department of Environmental Protection has been eviscerated, and pollution enforcement is incredibly important. It gets to the root of our asthma crisis. It gets to the root of so many problems. We need to go back to actually funding and doing basic pollution enforcement. And you know what? This starts in our budget. I'm strongly opposed to the proposal to add in new staff in our budget to advocate on behalf of businesses in order to pay for itself by forcing through more projects. We need to actually start enforcement and fines and real environmental enforcement in our state. And it is a shame that we have moved away from that. It's been quiet, people haven't been paying attention, but it happens when the director gets awards from one of the state's biggest business groups for her regulatory changes to help business on the environment. We need tough environmental enforcement to stop pollution because pollution hurts all of us.
I've been part of all the meeting we've been doing about Washington Park, and I have to thank her for all the work you've done with Washington Park and the councilman for that district. They've been working very hard to prevent that company to come and do that thing. And I believe, like Councilman Harris said, that this is everybody's responsibility. It's not just us. It's the community, it's people from the neighborhood getting together and not allowing that company to come and utilize the space. Then I think we are working very hard with the city council, with the Senate. We already sent a letter getting opposed to this from a sign for most of the Providence delegation, and we all against this what happened and out in that work. Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Sure. I don't know. You have lost it.
Yeah. It's not just, okay, it's not just not wanting them to come in, it's changing the narrative in the whole area. It's making it attractive for cleaner businesses to come in there. Like Gotham Foods goes into one part of downtown, and then there's artist lofts and businesses in another part of town, and we still get
The
a
dump. The dump.
Right, and
Exactly.
we getting dumped on. So how do we change the narrative with zoning, with legislation, with creative minds, start to change the whole image? Waterfront access,
Yes.
we don't have it. You know, a boulevard, we don't have it. We could. It could be so much more. So much more. It's such a beautiful spot. And we need all the great ideas to come to the table and to make it possible so that clean business would want to go there. Nobody wants to go there. And the road especially. What would it take to get the railroad tracks out of the north-south stretch of Allen's Avenue besides a miracle of money coming down from the sky? You're like, how do we get that? That would be a state chunk of money. That's like, I think, the first thing. Anybody have an idea how that happened?
We have time for a response.
Yes.
So to speak to the first part, you know, one of the one of the things that's, I think, really real at that part of the waterfront is that it is a working waterfront in a lot of ways. I think as long as I've been here in Providence for 17 years, as long as I've lived here, we've had this conversation and question that, like, how do we do what Lombardi was speaking to, right? Like, how do we lift it up and make it the gem that it is and maintain the, pretty decent jobs that exist there for people in Providence, and I think that's an ongoing question. I think that's like so many of the things that we've said here tonight. It's a question about priorities, right? And so one of the things that has really been happening in Providence over the last 5 or 10 years is this really incredible and remarkable solid organizing around environmental justice, specifically with communities of color standing up and saying enough. And I think this is one of those places, right, where that matters so much and is going to change the conversation. I think it's happening, and it's a slow and valid and good process. Anyone else want?
Yeah, I want to echo the same thing. I think that it has already started with the work that you guys are doing. Let's face it, there have not been no organizing around it. Trust me, it goes back to the grassroots. It goes back to each one, touch one. It goes back to the people who are the voices, who are the voices in the community, the people who are impacted, who knows more about the situation than people who are impacted by it. who can drive it even home more than mothers who have children with asthma, or people, like you said, even further beyond that we don't even know yet. I mean, you're driving the conversation, we found out about asthma, what else are we finding out in that area? Are people getting other things that we don't quite been able to identify? So these conversations start out just where it is right now. And again, it's very, very important to make sure that there's a diverse group of voices coming out of this whole push. Solidarity wrapped around it. And I believe there is a victory in everything that we can do. And there is a vision that can come from the people. And it can be driven by the people. I wouldn't want to just start zoning on, changing zoning orders without people having something to say about it, because I might cut the wrong thing. I've seen a lot of stuff that have been zoned and redistricting and everything else, and neighborhoods who have changed that shouldn't been done in the way it has. So I really depend on people to drive the force. I really do. I think a lot of that have started.
And this is an important time. I'm going to go back to what I said before. This is an election year. If you feel very concerned about that, you need to confront your elected officials, or whomever they may be, and say, look, where do you stand on this issue? Do you think that, what is your vision for the port? Do you have even a thought about the port? You know, they may say, well, you know, I live in Warwick. No. Rhode Island is small enough that, you know, what you do in Warwick is going to affect what we do here, what we do in Bristol. It all matters. It all matters. So this is about priority. This is about, you know, taking it to give them the challenge, give them the test. So, you know, what is this all about over here? Because this, and when you look at me, meaning you, meaning the West Broadway, which means, you know, 125 people, 250, whatever that number may be. If you're full with us, I was going to use another word, I'm sorry. You're fooling with 200 families, or you're fooling with 100, because we're going to work as a force to make sure that you don't get reelected, or at least send you the message that, you know what, you had a close race, next time may be a little different. As I said earlier, you win by 87 votes, you swing 44, the election's over, you lose by 1. It's that simple.
Mail-in ballot.
There you go.
So I think part of what this gets to, you know, why are we not investing in the kind of fundamental changes to our waterfront needed to drive a different direction? It's because those are public infrastructure investments, public infrastructure economic development investments. And Rhode Island has just refused to do that in recent years. We spent all of our economic development investment funds on specific gifts to cash businesses. We do not do the stuff that we used to do, like what we did with Waterfire, where we opened up the waterfront. We make those investments in infrastructure to catalyze other things. We just give the cash straight to the businesses. And that's the wrong approach. We need to be making those catalytic investments that open up so much more, that are investing in public infrastructure, in public things, environmental cleanup, not just direct cash gifts to businesses. And that's why we need to change our economic development vision. You know, in Pawtucket, some people may know I was very opposed to the Apex Stadium deal, which is just straight cash for the stadium. We gave the money, it fell through anyway. And instead, this time, we've actually done some of the investment to unlock the Pawtucket waterfront, to make it a beautiful place, and it's leveraging more investment and a bigger development. And that's the right vision for us to bring forward. And that means, and it's really important, we have to talk about our waterfront on the Woonasquatucket. We never think about Olneyville as a waterfront community, or the Valley neighborhood as a waterfront community. That's why we need to bring that same kind of state development tools to invest in that kind of infrastructure for our waterfront in Olneyville and the Valley neighborhood.
Sometimes the better idea comes from the people. And I really think it's so many things that can be done near our port. And I remember many years ago, we used to take the ferry from there to the Black Island. And unfortunately, it didn't work. I think at the same time, we all need to support small business in those areas, because that's what happened. They come and do it, but then we don't support it. Then I don't know what happened. It wasn't there for long. It was there for a very short time. that I remember the ferry was coming there, people was getting the ferry from there to Black Island. And I think it was a wonderful idea. And I think we just need to bring more people together and the community together to put ideas. What do you want to see